In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to set up your build settings in Unity so that you can build to an Oculus Quest. So I have a project here we've been working on in previous tutorials that has XR support in it. It also has a device simulator because I'm assuming we might be building on Mac where you can't just hit play and test in headset. But if you have been working with the device simulator and you're going to now make a build to headset, you definitely want to turn that device simulator off because it will conflict and make the headset not move in the way you would want it to. So I'm going to turn off my XR device simulator, and then I'm going to save. And then I'm going to go File, Build Settings. If you're working with the template that I've provided, I've already set the build settings up for you, but if you're coming from a blank project and you just want to know how to set these things up to build to Quest, this is the tutorial for you. So by default, you're likely on the platform Windows, Mac, Linux. And if we were going to make kind of tethered VR that was meant to be attached to a computer, this would be all well and good. But if I want it as standalone headset-based VR on a Quest 2, we've got to change to Android. So our first step when we are building anything is if there's no scenes in the build up at the top, you got to add open scenes, which is right here. I can't 100% explain why sometimes the scene just auto populates this list and other times it doesn't. But in my experience, it's just one of those things to double check. So then down on platform, we are indeed trying to build to an Android platform. And the first thing you have to do when you are kind of shopping for platforms is it's fine to just click on them, but that doesn't change what we're building to until we actually click Switch Platform, which is going to take a minute and kind of reset up our plugins and settings. Now, as a caveat, if you tried doing this and Android isn't even an option for you, it's probably because way back in Unity Hub, in your install, you did not include the Android build support module. So if you want to add it now, you can go back to Unity Hub, installs, and then in the version you're working with, click the settings gear and add modules. You want to make sure that Android build support and all of its kind of children are ticked yes, and then hit continue. And once that's all installed, you'll have to quit Unity and open it back up for all of this to appear. Okay, so there's a lot of default settings that are necessary to best support the Quest 2. The Quest 2 is pretty cool because it's standalone, but it also has a lot of graphical limitations because it's standalone. So we need to make sure we're pretty well optimized to make sure we don't have terrible frame rates when we actually build to the headset. So first things first, we're going to change texture compression to ASTC. The other thing that we want to change here is the max texture size to max 2048. After that, the only other thing on this window that we need to alter is where it says run device. This should, if you pull it down, have your actual Oculus Quest 2. If it doesn't, click refresh and make sure your headset is plugged in. The other requirement of this is that the headset has to be set up with developer mode. I can put a link in the description as to how to do that. Once you have a headset in developer mode, plugged into your computer or connected by AirLink or something, there will be a dialog box in the headset asking if you want to allow this computer to access its files, and you say yes to that. The other settings that would be necessary are all found in player settings. These things are largely about optimization, but there are some that are required. So inside player settings, you can change your company name, your product name, and you can even give it an icon. So these are all useful for making sure you can identify what you've put on your headset, but also for the professionalism of remembering to change things from default company. Then as we go further down, there are a list of settings that I wouldn't expect anyone to have memorized. I'm grabbing these from Oculus's documentation for Unity developers. So what this is telling us is all the settings that we want to have for our project so that it's best optimized and supported on the Quest 2. So as we scroll down, the first thing that Oculus suggests we change is dropping Auto Graphics API and instead using OpenGL. We could use Vulkan as well, but I guess that's still under development or less supported at the moment. So we can change the priority of this list, or we could select something and hit minus to remove it. As we go further down, we want to make sure that multi-threaded rendering is on and that texture compression format is ASTC. Down under identification, we want to make sure that the minimum API level is set on Android 10, API level 29. And then under configuration, the scripting backend should change to IL2 CPP. And that's going to allow us to change from ARM v7 to ARM 64. That is necessary for Quest 2 support, so we want to uncheck v7 and check 64. Under install location, we're going to choose automatic. And then finally, we're going to leave the player settings and go to quality over on the left-hand side. And this is where we're going to build our own kind of custom graphics quality setting for standalone VR. So the way we do this is click Add Quality Level, and then click the new one that says Level 6, and we're going to rename it Standalone VR. We want to change pixel light count to 1, anti-aliasing to 4 times 4x, and we're going to change VSync to don't sync. Down here under textures, we're going to change from forced on to per texture. And then we want to change soft particles to off. Everything else can be left as default here, with billboard's face camera position, yes, and shadows can be set as is. And that should be pretty decent settings for your Quest 2 build. So now finally, with all those things set up, you can hit X and you can hit build and run. And what that's going to do is not only make a build local to your hard drive, which you'll have to name and give a folder for it to live in, but the run part of this, when we have this set on our Quest 2 headset, we'll actually go ahead and sideload your software directly to the Quest 2. And it'll autoplay. So when this build is finished, you'll be able to put on your headset and your software will be playing. And if you're developing on a Mac, this is essentially the only way to test in headset on your controller. The first time you build, it takes a long time. Unity has to create a lot of the assets that it is making that first time. But then it keeps them saved and cached after that. So, it might be 5 minutes or more building the first time, depending on the complexity of your project. But after that, it might be more like a minute and a half each time. Certainly longer than hitting play on your on your scene window, but not impossible to work with. So my general sort of decision tree on a Mac when I'm working on a VR project is, if it would be quicker to test what I'm trying to test in the device simulator, I just turn the device simulator on and hit play, and then I walk myself over to that cube and just make sure that I can get there. But if I needed to then pick something up off the cube, throw it across the room, and make sure it landed in a certain target, I would have a very hard time doing that with my mouse simulation of the hand tracking controllers. But I could probably be willing to wait the 90 seconds it would take to build to headset and then try it in my real controllers.